For more than 20 years, I've walked the journey of people as they are dying. And what I describe as a good death is one where death was expected and people have been prepared and they've looked back on their life and seen some meaning in it, and those at the bedside have been supported, and there has been honest communication. In fact, last week I was with a lovely family and they had the room full of candles because they wanted to light the way for their mother, and they really felt by doing that they were participating and supporting her in her final moments. Okay? What I describe as an awful death is one where the person who is dying has physical, emotional and spiritual pain and discomfort, and they don't know how to express what they need. And those trying to support the dying person are bewildered. They want to help, but they don't know how, because they don't know what the dying person wishes and how best to relieve the discomforts that they are having. And that is one of the reasons why Nursling Foundation is putting so much emphasis on helping people plan for end of life so that it can be different. Many people see it as a graduation and an important part of life, and that is how it should be.
When I ask people what they would like in terms of a way of dying, many will say that they'd like to die quickly. They'd like a sudden death. But for most of us, it's not like that, because a lot of it's done in hospital and very medicalised. And there comes a time in many of these journeys where there isn't much more that can be done to lengthen that journey or reverse it in some way. And you're looking for what can make that final time as good as possible. And there are many aspects of that, I think. What makes death for a person who's dying slowly, progressively, what makes it the best? Well, I think there are some aspects for that. It's where it might occur. You really need to be in a place that you've chosen, if possible. You need to have good people around you that can give you good support, medical support, nursing support. The idea of palliative care comes in to make that process of dying as good as possible, to make it a death which is lawful, but which is assisted in the ways that help it to be as good as possible.
Our legislative and community response in this area of palliative care, both at the community end and at the legislative end, has responded well, I think, to people's needs and their understanding at the community level. Unfortunately, it's not always the case that every member of the community understands exactly what their rights are and what their responsibilities are in this area. So there is still a fair bit of work to do, even though the groundwork has been well set out in this area. I think we all have a responsibility, though, to ourselves and to our families and to our loved ones, even to our friends and neighbours, to understand what can be done and what can't be done to ensure what we like to call, I think, in South Australia, a good death.
The principle of law is generally that we all have the right of personal autonomy and we can make decisions for ourselves. And so whatever medical treatment that you want, then it's up to you to make that decision after you've been given the information and you make an informed decision as to what sort of treatment you want. However, for many of us, as we get older, we will get to a stage where we may not be able to make those informed decisions for ourselves. Now, people seem to be, they're still under the impression that if they've got a power of attorney in place, that's all they need. They don't need any other documents to be executed if they're getting older and they can't manage their own affairs. An ordinary old power of attorney would be okay. Well, the big defect with them was that a power of attorney only continues so long as the person who granted it still has the capacity to revoke it. So if you are starting to be demented, then the attorney could no longer legally operate under that power of attorney. Well, then Parliament passed this Act called the Enduring Powers of Attorney and Agency Act, which prescribed a statutory form of a power of attorney. It's quite a simple document, and the effect of the Act is that if you execute a power of attorney in that form, as prescribed by the legislation, if it's so drafted, it will endure, and that's why it's called an enduring power of attorney. It will endure past the time when you lose your mental capacity. And you can draft an enduring power of attorney so that it only comes into effect when you do lose your marbles, or you can draft it so that it comes in immediately. And I, for example, have executed an enduring power of attorney, and a solicitor looks after my affairs for me, and it operates now. Even though I've still got, well, I think I've still got capacity. You'll be able to tell me by the end of tonight whether that's correct. But it endures, it continues on. And instead of having all the powers listed, it just says that I want my attorney to have all the powers of a natural person, and then there's provision in the document that if you want to limit the powers, you can limit the powers in the document.